Hello all. Today I'm going to provide a brief introduction to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and culture before introducing a wonderful Aboriginal musician. So my name is Yin Paradies. I'm a Wakaya man, a particular tribe of Aboriginal people in Australia that I am a descendant of and identify with. I'm also a professor of race relations at Deakin University. This is a map of over 500 tribal groups of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that existed in Australia prior to colonisation. So Aboriginal people live on the mainland and Torres Strait Islander people live off the coast of Queensland at the tip of Cape York. So about Indigenous societies before colonisation. Typically, Aboriginal people worked about 4 hours a day for subsistence, using sophisticated fire skills to curate abundant, convenient, predictable and sustainable landscapes that both provided for them, but also allowed a balance with other life. Indigenous people sowed, irrigated, tilled, weeded, cropped, stored food, altered rivers with dams, channels, weirs, and lived in permanent grass and stone houses of various sizes. We enjoyed long and healthy lives, 60 plus, and a largely peaceful pan-continental system of trade and social interaction, alongside some violence and warfare. Here's an example of a grindstone that's kept in the Australian Museum that has traces of plants and animal material dated to 32,000 years ago, suggesting that Aboriginal Australians were the first in the world to make bread, long before evidence of anywhere else in the world. After colonisation, there were very significant, devastating impacts on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, including displacement, forced labour, removal of children, relocation, ecological destruction through introduced animal and plant species, massacres, genocide, slavery, intentional and unintentional spread of deadly diseases, banning of Indigenous languages, regulation of marriage, movement, where and when and how people could work, as well as assimilation and eradication of social, cultural and spiritual practices. Some minor positive impacts were friendships, marriage, trade and technology use, for example, uptake of metals, which weren't smelted in Australia prior to colonisation. Indigenous cultures are quite different from particularly Western cultures in that we have a circular, rhythmic, cyclic approach to time and temporality, where the future is remembered, the past is yet to come, and now is experienced as very much thick and textured rather than dissected clock time. Holistic thinking and being and doing, that's more than just binary. It's about reason, emotion, intuition, and imagination, a focus and a valuing of things such as wisdom, humility, respect, generosity, and responsibility, with knowing, being, and doing via many senses, not simply just sight and sound, which are quite privileged in Western cultures. Indigenous peoples, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in Australia, we have connected, embodied relationships with each other, but also with other life forms, non-human life forms, including the land, sea and sky, within a cosmos that we consider to be alive in all its aspects and sentient. Knowledge, truth and understanding in Indigenous cultures is ever always incomplete. It's about embodied collective action, experience and meaning making. It's more than just the written word, that's for sure. Truth is expressed via stories. Facts are considered to be badly told stories lacking embedded context and background. And learning, memory occurs via story, song, music, dance, painting, carving, ritual, ceremony, and country, which we consider to be land, sea, and sky. And on that note of music, I'd like to introduce Sean Ryan, who's a Kuku Nyunkal man from far North Queensland and has spent the last 30 years performing traditional ceremonies, songs and dances to audiences worldwide in Europe, North America, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. An accomplished didgeridoo or yiki yiki player and singer in his own right, Sean has collaborated with many music legends. His talents have seen him entertaining dignitaries worldwide, such as private performances for former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan. And today he is performing for you.
Yalada to you all. My name's Sean Ryan. I belong to the Kuku Nyunkal people of far northern Queensland. Kuku Nyunkal meaning black cockatoo. I'm currently here living on Wurundjeri country, so I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. For all those folks there attending the Deakin's conference, just like to say to you, Yalada, Yanjananga Bubana, Wurundjeri. In other words, that means as you walk the country of the Wurundjeri mother people, which is the land that we now are upon, I hope you have their blessing. But anyway, folks, where I come from in it there, it's a tradition to play this instrument here. You commonly know it as the didgeridoo. Didgeridoo is not actually, in fact, a traditional name for this instrument. In my language, or my people's language, we call it yiki yiki. Yiki yiki means voice of the ancestors or voice of the earth, which is the same thing to us. It's a traditional instrument that's been used for about 2,000 years. Originated up in the Northern Territory in Arnhem Land, northeast Arnhem Land. So if you don't know where Arnhem Land is, I'll just get out my little handy map of Australia. This is Eastern Australia, Cape York, Queensland, Western Australia. This is where Darwin is. That's where northeast Arnhem Land, and if you can use your imagination, we're about down there. But anyway, it's the didgeridoo was traditionally used around, or invented up in Arnhem Land. It was actually called yidiki up there. They first called it yidiki because the first sound to come out of it, which was a trumpet sound like this. That was actually the reason why they called it yidiki, because yidiki in their language, it actually means sound of the emu. So when they use that in ceremonies, they show the movement of the emu like this. And that's why it got the name yidiki when it was invented 2,000 years ago. Traditionally, it was used up in the top parts of Australia through through Arnhem Land to Katherine, over to Western Australia for a little bit, and then across the Gulf countries groups, and it went all the way east until it got to my country. We're the most easterly group to have used it in traditional times, because just to the east of us is the Daintree National Park. It's actually the world's oldest rainforest at about 140 million years old. But I'm privileged to actually have been born into this group of people. It's that actually used it traditionally, so it's been something that's been part of my life for 30 years professionally, and I've been sharing it around the world, just like I'm sharing it with you today. But anyway, when it comes to didgeridoos in it there, well, first of all, the name didgeridoo, I mentioned before, is not an Aboriginal name. The reason why I got the name didgeridoo is because there was actually a man who was travelling around Australia, an Englishman, who was keeping a journal. And he actually, in fact, wrote down in his journal one day, last night, the silence of the bush was disturbed by the infernal sound of didgeridoo. And that was actually, in fact, the first usage of that word. That Englishman created that word. He actually put inverted commas around it to actually say that it's to notify people who are reading his journal that actually he invented the word. It was a sound word, an onomatopoeia. So that word itself and it there's the rhythm itself, or the sound you probably heard, was something like this. So that's what you got there. That's the origins of the word didgeridoo, not a traditional name. The first name was called yidiki, sound of the emu, from the northeast Arnhem Land people or Yungal people. And then over in my country in the eastern part, the most easterly group to have used it, the Kuku Nyunkal people, we call it yiki yiki. Just 2 names out of the 200 traditional names for this instrument. It's been around for around about 2,000 years. It was actually, in fact, as a result of trading with the Asian cultures and societies. It's we actually trade as things, natural resources from our country for steel. So actually, in fact, what you're looking at is an Iron Age instrument. It wouldn't be possible to actually make these things unless you had iron or steel to actually start to create what is basically a hollow log. It's a eucalyptus tree, there's about 900 odd species of it in Australia. There's only several there, or a few of them that actually are used for didgeridoos making. What's going on, folks, is that was actually a trunk of a tree, a trunk of a eucalyptus tree that I found up in Mareeba, just up in North Queensland. So what happened is that I checked out the tree to see if it had actually been attacked by termites, because for millions of years in Australia, termites have actually been naturally hollowing out eucalyptus trees. So if you look through there, you can see maybe there's a bit of light through there, but that's actually a natural hollow. That's actually, in fact, the hollow that the termites create when they're eating out eucalyptus trees. It's actually a nutrient core that they're going for, and when they eat out that nutrient core, they actually build the nest inside of it. So as they're eating it out in it there, they're building their nest inside of it. Once they've actually completely used up all this food in that tree, they move the nest to another tree, and then eventually that nest will start to dry out and crack and crumble. So what I did is actually checked out the tree in it there and went, oh yeah, that's one looks like it's been attacked by termites. I went up to it, scraped off a bit of bark, and then with the wooden part of the axe in it there, I tapped on the tree. And actually it had a hollow sound. So that told me the termites had already left in it there. They'd finished using it as a home and also a food source. Then what I did is I chopped down that tree around about chest height. That actually allows that tree to regenerate, because eucalyptus trees in it there, they don't get killed by the termite. It's been happening for millions and millions of years. And that termite, that species of termite called the tree piping termite up there, has actually evolved with the eucalyptus tree over millions of years. So it doesn't kill the tree, so the tree was very much alive when I chopped it down. So chopping it off at chest height allows it to regenerate. Then what we do is we actually start scraping off the outside layer. Well, actually no, first of all, we actually start getting in there with a long steel chisel. As I mentioned before, it's an Iron Age instrument. So what we do is we chisel out the inside there, so you can see that I've actually opened up the natural hollow that the termites made. So you can see that's the original diameter of these of the hollow that the termites made. Then I as I'm chiseling it out, what I'm doing is actually playing it and tuning it. Because when we tune it, what we're doing is actually, as you open it up, you actually start to raise the pitch of this the instrument. And so when we get to the right pitch and the right sound quality, we stop. Then what we do is we actually start to strip off the outside layers. So you can see that this is probably basically the log was about that thick when I first started off, the trunk of the tree. And then what I did is I shaved off all of this stuff up here, so the sound would actually resonate, and it's effectively and stuff like that. So once I did that, I just chucked on a bit of black paint there, and it's a little bit of a finish there, just as make it a little bit more durable and stuff like that. But that's how you make the didgeridoo, or yiki yiki in my language. But anyway, folks, I'm going to get back into playing there. I hope you enjoy the music. This is the sound of Australia as far as I'm concerned. It's a unique instrument in it there, and I hope you enjoy. Okay. So here in Australia, it's like Aboriginals, like people have been on this continent. Well, to be honest, not many people actually do know. It's like nobody knows actually for a fact exactly how long. So as according to the academics and the archaeological record and studies on genetics and stuff like that, some people place it between 40,000 to 120,000 years. So we've actually been on this like continent, well, it's like longer than any other culture in the world. And in fact, we are actually recognized as this, like the world's oldest and continuing cultures. So we've been here, it's like, you know, practicing our culture since way back whenever that started. Aboriginal people, we're not just one people. And in fact, Aboriginal people, we don't identify ourselves with that word Aboriginal. It's not our word, it's not from our language. We are actually individually known, it's like as different people. You know, we actually have a cultural and societal diversity, you know, that matches any continent in the world, industrial and also agricultural cultures. And in fact, we actually had over 200 to 300 language groups, as they're called nowadays. We didn't have a tribal system in there. We actually had a system, a ceremonial economy, that actually meant that we actually had relationships, spiritual relationships with each other, the land itself, the resources. And also we had actually ceremonial obligations and responsibilities to preserving that. So we would travel many miles into other people's countries to actually perform ceremonies. And in turn, when you perform ceremony, because you have a ceremonial responsibility and authority over it, well then you get paid. So we actually had economies based upon those ceremonial relationships. To give you an idea, just generally speaking, you've got the Nyungal up in the northeast Arnhem Land area, it's all the way through Arnhem Land. You got over in my country, you have the Bamaga, it's north of us in the top of Cape York, it's Pamaga. South of them, it's in most parts of Queensland, they call themselves Murrays. It's then you move into New South Wales and also it's Victoria, they call themselves Kuri. It's and also if not Guri. It's then you got the Nyungar over in Western Australia, you got the Yadano, in the Central Desert. You got a lot of different names for what Aboriginal people have called themselves as people. These are all names in their languages that mean people. So for me, I actually from the Kuku Nyunkal Bamaga, or if not the Kuku Nyunkal Bubabamanyadamuku. In other words, the people of these, the never-ending song and journey of what is, what was, and what will be, and what will never be. So we're a very diverse group of people. We don't identify as being Aboriginal. We have our names to describe who we are and what we are and our relationships with our world. So when you're in Australia up there, it's probably a good thing to ask, if you meet one of us up there, it's oh, which group of people you're from. It's commonly nowadays we call ourselves First Nations. But as there was a diverse societies around Australia, also too as well, we actually practice a system of reciprocity between each other and also the land itself. A sustainable system of reciprocity that's been used for tens and tens of thousands of years. It's it's something that's is not seen on the scale and it's for such a longevity for any continent and any culture and group of people around the world. Something that I'm actually very, very, very proud of and very, very privileged to be part of. But anyway, folks, I'm going to start playing another ditch rhythm for you. This next rhythm I'm going to play for you is actually, in fact, it's all about the emu and also how the emu, he actually represents all the good things, good qualities that a man should have. It's being a good father, being a good teacher. It's also being a good protector too as well. These are the values that we see as beings men. So this rhythm here is all about this, like the emu in it there. Or in my language, we call it guranji in it there. So guranji is like, yeah, this one here is all about that one. It's like teaching men, and also men celebrating the good qualities they have as men. Okay, so before I finish up, I'm just gonna basically let you know all about the mysteries about how to play a didgeridoo. It's not that hard. It's one of the hardest instruments to understand how to play, because as you can see, there's absolutely no moving parts to give you any indication as to how the sounds are produced. In this case here, just all you need to remember is that one, this is not the instrument, it's the resonator. It's amplifying in a certain tone. So that's what it's controlling. And what it's controlling is all the sounds that my body makes, or the didgeridoo or yiki yiki player, as we say. Now the thing is that's like with this one, it's actually, what we're doing is to create the vibration, all we're doing is using our lips. So just a nice low, bottom lip action. Don't go ahead and try and step on the gas and blow through it like a trumpet, because that's all you'll get. So if you slow it down, just dribble the air using your bottom lip. That's how you create this, the vibration or the drone. So that's the fundamental sound. What we're doing with that vibration is manipulating it in the same way as you would use your mouth to control the vibration that your vocal cords makes. So in this case here, the lips are just another set of vocal cords, another vibration that we can use shapes inside of our mouth, shapes that we use our tongue, jaw and cheeks to create. So what would normally be called enunciating in it there, because you can't sort of speak, it's without moving your mouth around in it there, it just sounds like you're mumbling and stuff. So that's what we're doing. We're actually in fact using words to create the different sounds. This is the world's only spoken word instrument. So it's actually in fact using words to create the different sounds, to manipulate the vibration that we use with our lips. And this is with our voice sometimes and also without our voice. So just to like explain to you in it there, or to actually clear it up in it there, if I whisper the word didgeridoo, so all of the sounds and the rhythms that we traditionally use on this instrument are actually in fact words. We're just speaking through the instrument. That's how we create the sounds. So once you understand that, well then it's actually easy to just like master this instrument. Well, with a little bit of practice, of course. But anyways, like yeah, so this particular rhythm, and it's actually a rhythm that I was using at the start in it there, it's called dittamor, dittamor, dittamor. And this is actually in fact a very, very traditional northern territory, Arnhem Lands regions rhythm that I actually learnt off the Aboriginal people from up there, or if not as they're known as the Nyunkal people up there. So this one is actually dittamor, dittamor, dittamor. I'll start it off slow so you can hear me saying the words, and then I'll start to piece it together and make a rhythm out of it. And there you go, that's what's commonly known as the didgeridoo. In my language, or our language from the Kuku Nyunkal people, we call it the yiki yiki. And traditionally the first name it was called was yiriki. So world's only spoken word instrument, and one of the few sort of naturally made instruments to a certain extent. But anyway folks, I hope you enjoy your stay while you're here in along the shores of Nam, the traditional name that the Kulin Nations call. It's like the area around Port Phillip and the Melbourne Harbour area. So yellada to you all. I hope you enjoy yourselves.